Let's get more on Nigeria's counter-terrorism efforts. And joining us on the program is a counter-terrorism expert, David Otto, who joins us from Uganda. Thank you for joining us on today's program.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So what do you think of the report by Transparency International against the Nigerian military?
I think what is important is that the Nigerian military has been doing a lot of work, to ensure that, the Boko Haram crisis is seen to diminish. So I think such reports, despite the fact that, they point out this unity within the Nigerian army, I think, is rather important, for us to understand that the military alone cannot, be used, to tackle groups like Boko Haram. The military has done its job. I think it's time for the military to hand over, the next phase of this, to the members of the community and to the police. So I think, the Transparency International report, is a good thing, but it doesn't really help in the fight against Boko Haram.
Right, David, the army has indeed denied this report, saying that the present administration has eradicated corruption and that the military is now well equipped. Looking at the successes recorded by the Nigerian army so far, do you agree with this statement?
The thing is, corruption within the army, is something which, was widely reported, in the last administration. But there are different types of corruption when you look at, the current strategy that, the government is looking at, one of which is that, there are conflicting reports, either by the Nigerian army or the Nigerian Air Force as to, the activities in terms of tackling Boko Haram. And also, what is important, for our viewers to note is that, the army itself, cannot, claim to have defeated Boko Haram, and that is why I believe that, the most important things to look at is, whether, the strategies which the army is putting in place, is actually helping in tackling the insurgency. Boko Haram still has, the Salafist jihadist ideology, which motivates young people to join the group. They are still capable of acquiring weapons, and they are still attacking, the army and other civilian soft targets. So I think that is what, one needs to focus on. Blaming the army or saying that there is corruption does not really help in the fight against the insurgency in northern Nigeria.
Well, there have been some suggestions of a way out of this. Transparency International, for instance, has suggested that countries such as the United States could encourage defense reforms in Nigeria by withholding arms for sale to help the fight against Boko Haram. Do you think this will bring about the transparency that agencies like Amnesty is looking for?
What is important is for one to understand that no matter how many military jets a country has, it doesn't still determine whether that country can be able to defeat an insurgency group. The U.S. has one of the best military strategies, has one of the best military equipment, but they've still not been able to tackle ISIS, in Iraq and Syria. So even if the Nigerian government, is being sold or refused to be sold, military jets from the United States, I don't think that still could hinder, the fight against Boko Haram. Remember, Boko Haram is an organization that is faceless. If you want to defeat Boko Haram, it is not by the military tactics. You have to create a civilian-based counter strategy which involves the people, which has to do with trust within the communities that are affected. So whether the Americans, sell jets to Nigeria, I don't think, that would help in countering Boko Haram, because Boko Haram is not a conventional army. So I think what the focus should be on is looking at the conditions that help young people to join these organizations, trying to tackle on ground, the means by which Boko Haram manages to acquire weapons and acquire finance, and also trying to police, the various soft targets that Boko Haram targets when it wants to attack. That is what is important. Military jets will not tackle Boko Haram.
One of the ways that we have discovered is that Boko Haram, gets people onto its selfies through kidnapping. We can talk about the Chibok girls that were released recently, all 82 schoolgirls from captivity. The federal government had to swap some militants to get these girls. Many countries around the world say they don't negotiate with terrorists. Do you think this method will be counterproductive?
The issue of negotiation with terrorist organizations could have many aspects of it. I think the aim of this particular negotiation that has taken place was to swap, some Boko Haram commanders, with the Chibok girls. And I think that aim has been achieved. Now, the aim was not, to tackle, the insurgency, because if that was the aim, then, they wouldn't have swapped, the commanders for the Chibok girls. There are different ways that, you can look at this. One of the ways that, you can look at it from the positive side is that it does establish a line of contact, a communication channel between the elusive Boko Haram various factions and the government, meaning that they are able to talk, they are able to agree on something. So I think this is a first step towards having some of these factions to surrender, and this can only be done as we've seen in the experiences of the 82 captives and the other 21 that were released. This can only be done using local partners. In terms of the counterproductive nature, I don't believe that the Nigerian government really thought that by actually exchanging the commanders with the Chibok girls, it was aimed at tackling Boko Haram. No, they know that this kind of discussions is just to open up a channel of communication and establish that trust, so that in future programs that would entail surrendering by some of these factions would be seen as a genuine attempt by the government to talk to the terrorist organizations. So I think it's a good thing, rather than, a counterproductive nature, because counterproductive is not, the word to use here, because the government did not expect that, by exchanging prisoners, it would resolve the problem.
Right, counter-terrorism expert David Otto, thank you so much for your time on Network Africa.